Okay, we are live, running a few minutes late, but it's going to be a great show. We're going to talk about AI, cybersecurity, all kinds of things. We have a great guest today, an old friend. Things are going crazy, and we're going to talk a lot about multiple things. But before we get started, let's have our own John Sibley Butler
You
with a
got a
tune in.
friend in me. You got a friend in me. When there's troubles up ahead and you're miles and miles from your real nice bed, just remember what your old past said. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me.
Woo!
Always good.
So Johnny, we were talking as we were, you know, getting together for the show today about so many things going on, and I wanted to circle back eventually with Mark on his opinions about the Netflix Paramount deal, why Netflix decided not to buy old content and went the new way of creating movies with agents and AI and not having to pay a single actor for movie making. And we've been watching obviously at the macro level all these events, wars and stuff, and it's just fascinating what's happening. I just came from the Texas Public Power Association annual conference on marketing and policy. And, the ERCOT guys were talking about how they're all about AI, trying to figure out how to fix the grid for the future and how to get to 200 gigawatts of production. And the investments that are coming to Texas are ginormous, and nobody can keep up with the hyperscalers and the whole thing about Elon Musk going to the moon to set up data centers and the data centers on space. And this whole thing is like moving way too fast, Johnny. What's going on?
Well, what's going on right now that will affect all of this is the conflict in the Middle East. And we've had discussions. I've gone back to the best journal ever. It's called the Journal of Armed Forces and Society. It's an academic journal started by Morris Janowitz at the University of Chicago to explore everything military. It's very, very, it's international. So I've published there probably 5 times on the relationship between military organizations and corporate organizations. And of course, the big thing now that the insiders are talking about is AI and the impact of AI on the war. For example, America destroyed a school for kids. There's no doubt in my mind that America did this on purpose. There's just no doubt in my mind, period. But my question is, could it have been an AI decision? With AI, there's no human being there to say, stop, wait, let's take another look. The thing about AI, when it's applied to military organizations, we might add, rather than to business organization, is that the results are decisive. So I've always said that, for example, if you want to do case study, go go do case studies on military organizations. All right. You want to do case studies on military organization, go do the case study on Custer. Go do the case
Mm-hmm.
study on the decision the Japanese made to bomb Pearl Harbor. Well, in those cases, the case studies talk about human decisions. What are human beings doing? In this case, we've got to ask the question: to what extent are the targets of war being directed by AI? And it's a frightening possibility because, as I said, there's absolutely no one there to say, "Wait a minute, let's think about on this decision because it's based on algorithms and it's very, very decisive." In the business world, that is one thing. Now you got to realize, Andreas, this is what's going on. I think that, at full disclosure, I'm a decorated Vietnam veteran, which I'm proud of, and I always ask, where's the unit behind us? What's going to happen after I was in the Americare division, after we go through Shulai and do X, Y, and Z? Well, the reality for us in America and all the decisions to go into war, I don't know where Iran was threatening us. I just don't have that data. But my suspicion is that it's related to us and Israel, who we support in that part of the world. But let's think about the oil prices, and not just the oil prices. Let's talk about the minerals that we're going to need to carry out our economy. All of the earthly things that we need to carry out, to do cell phones, to do chips, and etc., can be found in that part of the world. So I'm not so much worried about the price of oil. I'm worried about rare the rare minerals that we use from the rare earth. Those things that will make us do great in this digital economy. And I can see a scenario, for example, where this really escalates into World War III. Uh, and we always said we went in behind the Marines in Vietnam, and we had boots on the ground. And I had great discussions yesterday about frightening possibilities. If we're going to go 10 years, we're going to need a draft. But if you put boots on the ground, how are you going to get to Persia? Let's call it Persia. This is a distinguished civilization that we bombed. This civilization is what, 2,500, 3,000 years old, a population of 95 to 100 million. And I'm not, and there were lots of changes going on there, and I'm not sure that the people that we killed were not more likely to look at our Western values than their traditional values, right? So if you take a look and you say, how could it escalate? If we have to have if we're going to do this, I don't know how you get there. You got a desert that's surrounded. What do? Do you march in there? Do you take the Marines to Turkey? They already said no in one case. And do we have a draft in America? How do we go boots on the ground? I'm guessing we're down to 400,000 for our military, because our military is now relates to, it's air superiority. So for folks who study military organizations like myself in the old days, there was a time when we wore boots on the ground, but then we had the Air Force to develop, and we said that we could just beat a country in submission by using a long-term strategy, which is, of course, air power, and we can drop bomb after bomb after bomb. Well, as a decorated Vietnam veteran, we tried that in Vietnam, and I think the Iranians has probably got all kind of stuff under under the earth, and also in mountains and stuff. So I
Mhm.
don't see I don't see a boots on the ground strategy. I don't think we have the military unless we do a draft. And I can tell you
Right.
this: I think if every American was told that somebody was invading us from the south, the north, or the east, invading this continent, America, that people will respond. But I'm not sure if Americans will respond to boots on the ground to go fight a war that was started, and I think we are now Israel, in other words, and I think that if you look at the future, I just do not see a runway coming off of that war. So I don't see boots on the ground. I don't see. I think they're gonna quote get off of their knees and fight to the very end because of their history. And finally, and then I shut up. I think there's a great possibility, and I don't know this. I look at how they are shooting down our drones. It has to be directed from either the Soviet Union, excuse me, Russia, or China. China has the technology and the satellites for to direct the cancellation, if you will, of the missiles that's being thrown at Israel. But I do believe that if we're going to do it, we should do it. But I just don't know how we do it. So all of the stuff that we're talking about today is being influenced by a conflict that will not be over. And it could go 10 years, it could go 15 years. Now, let's just say this. Unless the Trump administration
Mhm.
is going to meet the Iranians on a ship somewhere where they officially surrender, that's one thing. That happened in World War II, that happened in World War One, where they met in a train, in a caboose. But where would they meet? How would the war be officially over? So I just think that our entire economy, everything that we've worked on, including the satellites, including everything, is now there's a threat to everything. And the rare minerals that we use to make our economy go in this connected economy is now threatened. And I see no way out. This is the most pessimistic I've been in a long time.
Llewellyn King, let's try to keep that brief, please.
Well, my goodness, you are pessimistic, Johnny. You've got in the Middle East, you've got, if there's such a thing possible, double asymmetries. The first asymmetry is that Israel is vulnerable because it is physically small, and in a sense, Iran is invulnerable because it's physically large. It has 10 times the population, but it also has many times the land area. Israel has a nuclear weapon, but it's somewhat limited in where it could use it, because although nuclear weapons will take a whole city and a whole area, it won't necessarily subdue a greatly diversified people. The second asymmetry is that if Iran did have a nuclear weapon, it could obliterate Israel, because it's 10 million people, 1/10 of the population of Iran, are concentrated in a small country along a coastal strip. So you've got sort of double forces there. But one of the outcomes of this war will be a new effort by nations that do not now have nuclear weapons to acquire them, because the lesson of this war is really the lesson of the apocryphal weakling on the beach who gets sand kicked in his face. So he goes to the gym and gets muscles so nobody kicks sand in his face. The great threat to the world with nuclear power has not been Iran, it's North Korea. But we can't do anything about it because it already has a nuclear weapon and delivery systems, so that any hostilities against North Korea, they might be able to obliterate parts of Japan and certainly parts of South Korea. So that's why countries will be going forward looking at nuclear weapons with a new enthusiasm that they haven't heretofore, and that's very disturbing. We know those that are in the pipeline that'll probably try to get them quite soon, be Japan, South Korea, countries like that. But further on, any country sees that if you have a nuclear weapon, people tend to leave you alone because they don't know where you'll use it and whether it will be a first strike. The balance of power is immediately changed when you have a nuclear weapon, and you have a balance of power, balance of terror between Pakistan and India. China is a nuclear weapon state, and that is something we're all very aware of, as is Russia, two small European nuclear camps, Britain and France. The world is going to get more nuclear weapons, which is not desirable at all. My concern, and I've been watching nuclear proliferation as an issue for 50 years, it testified before the Senate on nuclear proliferation 40 years ago, and that is that you may get an accidental detonation. But the status quo has been disturbed by this war, which has been a war to defend Israel, not a war to advance the American interest. And the American interest is far from clear. It is not, as the White House press secretary said, to defend America. It is strictly to defend Israel. And this may not be the best way to do it. Going forward, we're going to have a new concentration, despite the attitude of the president, on renewable energy around the world. The constriction in the oil market has forced countries to look again at oil dependence and to take more heroic measures to get off oil if they are not an oil producer. By the way, the economy that has the most intensive use of oil on earth is the US economy, and we continue down that line. Encourage by the administration, which is unfortunate. Something like 80% of new cars sold in China will be electric. Ours will fall back from a hope for by 2030 of about 40% to maybe 20% or even less. The general hostility to renewable energy and to nuclear transportation of the administration is out of step with the general thrust of the world and the way that things are going. We're in danger of ending up as a minority country in the sense that we are pursuing time-worn and time-worn-out technologies. As to the end of the war, this because we have no declared objectives, we can say we've achieved them at any time. The president could, within 1 minute of now, say we won because we never knew what we were trying to win. There's no defined future, so there can be no defined loss. You can declare a victory and get out. And I suspect in 2 weeks, Trump will declare victory and stop it. The great weakness of this war is it's revealed our military weakness, not our military strength. We knew that we could bomb the hell out of anything we wanted to because we have such aerial superiority. What we didn't know was the efficacy of drones, and we were put in the awkward position of having to copycat an Iranian drone and then get technology and how best to defend against drones from Ukraine. That exposes a tremendous muscle-bound situation in our military, that we are not, we may be on the cutting edge of aircraft carriers and fighters, but we are not on the cutting edge of what is now happening in battlefields. And so that's a wake-up call. But it also shows any potential enemies we have what our vulnerabilities are. And don't think that Russia and China are not studying this war, and every American misstep is calculated into their future planning should they ever end up in a state of hostility with ourselves.
Let me go back to, thank you, Llewellyn. Let me go back to really the what's going on in the U.S. and try to fit in our guest speaker. So there is a race going on AI, which is the most significant race ever. It is an internal race that eventually will impact the global competitors that we have. It's about $1 trillion that are being put on the table in 2026 by all the big boys. OpenAI racing with Anthropic, with Gemini from Google, with Grok from SpaceX, so on and so on and so on. Apple just released, a new strategy and new computers, and their computers are selling like crazy for, local open models running on your computer without being connected to the cloud. NVIDIA is spending right now $26 billion of their war chest to build what is called open weight AI models to go vertical into all the industries. Meta is developing 4 new chips to power its own AI solution for its customers. On and on. We talked about the fact that related to the war, there's a fake AI content that is running rampant on the Iran war on X and all the social media portals. It's kind of hard to tell, where the truth lies anymore with the open AI avatars and stuff. And this all brings you back to security, identity, control of the truth. What's going to happen? How does this working out? You have the consumer space. You got the enterprise space. You got the government space. You got sovereignty going on. Corporations are global. Sovereign nations and geographic limitations are probably being eroded by AI in a way that we've never seen before. So our guest is really someone who is working with a very interesting new company. So let me introduce you to Mark Piening, Senior VP of Business Development and Growth at Protopia AI. And Protopia is a full time AI enabling enterprise company that lets corporations and their employees build, really next level cyber secure solutions. And, Mark will be able to explain this in better detail. The solution is called Stained Glass Transform, and it takes data from the root of trust and transforms that unprotected data into a randomized re-representation that is still usable for ML training and inference while maintaining data confidentiality. Mark, we want to hear the details. Tell us from the commentary that we have shared, what are your thoughts about the role that cybersecurity is looking to play? What's happening in the marketplace? What are your customers asking? And educate us a little bit about Protopia.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it's great to be with you, gentlemen, and great to see you all again. Much respect for your experience and your wisdom as we try to navigate today's world. We need to discern very, very deeply how we use technology. I don't need to remind you guys of the principle that technology is a tool and humans use them for good or bad. And so one of the reasons why I'm at Protopia is because we have a technology that can be used for good. And I'll tell you more about the technology here in a bit. But what's really interesting about your comments, particularly given the geopolitical landscape and some of the things that are happening in this race with AI, is the challenge to create these data centers that are AI equipped and can get the performance necessary, but also that people are building these sovereign AI factories, and that they're trying to find a way to protect the data, which is the gold, right? Is the jewel that powers AI and creates productivity and insights and differentiation. So the data is everything, really, and it's all finally kind of, we had this race to create models, we had this race to create GPUs and be fast and show inference times and all these things, and that's all an important kind of first phase development. But really now it's about, well, how are you going to use this capability, this capacity, assuming you can get your hands on it, sufficiently to do it at scale, and how are you going to use it in a safe way? And that's really what Protopia is all about. So just to lay out, just to get the facts on the table, what we're doing, and then we can go do some Q&A. But what we do, Protopia AI is a software company that, like you said, creates a model. We're a model that gets sent when you ask a model a question. So, like, just for lay people, like, I'll explain it like my mom is asking. If you are asking a question in a chat interface and you type a question to a prompt to a model and you hit send, that goes from your laptop or your trust zone, and it gets likely encrypted. Not always, but ideally it gets encrypted, packaged encrypted. And what happens is that text becomes tokens, right? And then those tokens are, so like Andres is probably a token, or Mark is a token. Llewellyn would probably be 2 tokens, right? It's just, think of it as a syllable. So each syllable becomes a token effectively, and that token lives in a vector database, a space. Think of this 3-dimensional space like the room you're in, and there are millions of values of vector values in this space. And so when you send a text that becomes a token, those get transformed into embeddings, and embeddings are mathematical values that are equivalent to the tokens. And those embeddings are sent today as plain text embeddings. They're encrypted, but when they get to the server side, wherever those models are, they are decrypted, because models need to read embeddings and they can't read encrypted embeddings. Things people have tried, like fully homomorphic encryption, all these things, they don't work for LLMs. So you have to decrypt. So when you decrypt, you violate zero trust principles by having plain text embeddings exposed on that third-party infrastructure that's often shared by different people or different business units, which creates risk for, in the security or IC community, or if you're collaborating between, say, like the state police, the border, DHS, and the IC community, or you're talking about, court documents, or you're talking about, healthcare data, about, I can just go on and on. So anytime there's sensitive data with enterprises where you're trying to use models, you are violating zero trust principles by definition. Everyone is. The only reason you've been comfortable is because all of the large CSPs and model hosting providers have been saying, these are not the droids you're looking for. What they're saying is, we have an indemnification clause. We will indemnify you. We will not do any harm. We will not make any mistakes. We will not forget to leave logging on and have logs with your plain text embeddings that expose questions that could be state secrets, or things that are intellectual property that your engineers are using, or your attorneys, or your whoever, right, that has some intellectual property tied to that prompt. So problem we solve is we make it safe. Now, how we do that, we can talk about in a second. But more importantly, just the world will be safer when we ask AI models questions. We know that the questions we're asking and the context we're providing is no longer exposed on that shared infrastructure that somebody else could make a mistake with or be a bad actor around. And instead, we can still get that output quality with the same performance and be able to use AI safely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Mark, basically, you're a trust company in this uncertainty as we use AI. And one of the things, let me just go back to what Llewellyn was talking about for 1 second. And about a month ago, I said on this program that we're building data centers in the wrong place. I think they should be underground where nobody can see them. Because an old soldier like me, the first thing you do is go after the communication networks. And if you look at what's happening now, they're going after our data centers, because that breaks the communication process. But let me ask you about what you're doing. If you look at your modeling, and then and if they're all crypto, or what I used to call, I guess it'd be Markov chains before they were computerized. And tell me, what do you guarantee a company in this changing? I mean, the model is always changing, and you're exactly right. You can use AI, but with no theory of why you're using it. It's just data in and garbage out. So if you're marketing to me, and I'm a big time John Butler firm with destination all over the globe that's using all kinds of mass communications. And we know about the the violation that people are trying to do to our communications as we move forward. Everything is going to the cloud. So now you are you're not the Wells Fargo. You're the person who protects Wells Fargo. You're the protection. Tell me what you can provide for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way to think about it is, let me just use a metaphor and then we'll go back to the tech. If you're driving a car, when Mercedes, before airbags existed, Mercedes was like, oh, this is innovative technology. We're going to license this airbag. And then they realized, wow, this is really great. This technology could be really valuable to the whole world. We're going to buy that company, and now we're going to license it to all the car manufacturers, because this is a thing that should just exist. Right? Everybody should have a car, an airbag in their car. It's safer for the world. It reduces insurance costs and medical bills and mortality rates and all these things. And so that was a good thing. This is like that. Every single place where people are asking questions with sensitive data. Not saying you have to have an airbag on your scooter, right, or on your bike. That's not what we're talking about. Not every form of transportation is the same. But for the appropriate AI use cases, which is many of them with if you have enterprises with sensitive data, they're going to want to protect these prompts to make it safer, so that there isn't risk that there's a bad value to you. Now you can get 2 to 10x utilization improvement because you're using AI infrastructure that is shareable. You wouldn't want to share that infrastructure if you couldn't be sure that your data is safe. But when you use Protopia stained glass transform in your AI pipeline, you now don't have that risk anymore. And so if that provider is offering you model inference services, and that it receives stained glass embeddings, then you know that you never sent your data out of your trust zone. It's just this mathematical random re-representation. It's random every time, and it's gibberish if it's intercepted, and it's, you can't crack it. There's a bunch of reasons why. We can talk about the math and the papers and all the things, but that's been validated by a bunch of really super smart math people. And so now you can say, okay, I can get a much cheaper price for my inference, and I can get that safety, and I can be compliant. And so for all those companies that are multinational that are trying to use AI services across all these sovereign AI factories in these different locations, be in compliance with different, government regulations, it changes the economics.
And let me just say, because I was trying to ask Andreas this the other day, as I was confused. There's no standardization yet, like we had the
Right.
standardization with the with the use of platforms when computers first came out. And we found it took us, Andre told me day before yesterday, it took us 30 years to standardize everything. So with the lack of standardization, then your AI agents, what the processes that you use have to be robust, right? They can't be narrow in a sense. How do you take care of the robustness with the fact that there's no standardization with in this period of rapid data growth and in this period
Yeah.
of new AI? So how will your algorithm standardize everything so you can assure me that, hey, it's okay?
Well, one of the things that happens today when you have like the latest and greatest GPUs, or I'll just say compute power from different vendors, is that they are leveraging things like confidential computing, which is, the requirement that you buy these greenfield systems and everything is perfectly kind of optimized down to the chipset level, and you can start doing certain things safely inside of that little enclave or inside of that zone. Your data is not often there. And so that promise of that is like how you get that standardization that you're talking about. What
Hmm.
we do is we provide is not greenfield, and you already have all these GPUs that the world is hybrid, right? And it will be, it's going to be hybrid. And so what we do is we provide this software method to bring that kind of standardization of I can send my data to whatever cloud and not have that risk or fear. There's lots of other things that other players are doing around standardization for the compute platforms. We're not a compute company, right? We're a software layer to make it safe to send your data to third-party compute. So we at some level, it's like knock yourself out, go get standardization. Hopefully you get there and it's great for the world, but we're providing a capability until that time happens so that you can, and by the way, like you're still going to be hybrid, right? I mean, even banks, they're hybrid. They use cloud sometimes and a lot of times they don't. And when they don't, they have lots of, air gaps and cages and all kinds of things they do. And it's the same with defense and lots of other biotech and, pharma and others. And so we see a world where there's a very big TAM to solve for the enterprise data that is sensitive, where you cannot risk somebody intercepting it, and more importantly, just below that kind of extreme risk, there's a middle of the market that says I need better utilization and better economics, and
Hmm.
so it's kind of where we're at.
I was just thinking about all the if statements that we used to do before. It shows you how
Mm,
far we have come because what you're talking about is, if statements. If X, Y, and Z equals Z, 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 then this equals this. You have 1,000 if statements. Okay, thank you very much.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Llewellyn.
yeah.
Thank you, Mark. I keep hearing about small language models.
Mm.
Where do they fit in?
I mean, they're going to be a predominant deployment model for models. And actually, we're technically a small language model. We're a small model. We can live on. It's probably not appropriate for me to keep saying this because at one time we were like we can live on a Raspberry Pi, which is true. But it's we can live on a smaller CPU or something smaller and live in your pipeline. And I think there's a lot of models and use cases where that'll be required. We see lots of edge computing use cases in the defense segment, like we were talking about earlier around drones and different use cases there. In fact, this is all public knowledge. We have two direct to phase two SBIRs with the Air Force and one with the U.S. Army as places where this technology is being considered to compete because of some of the things you guys have said. I mean, there's just a lot of the race is on, and so small language models is one example of what we're seeing across those use cases. Yeah.
To what extent does
Go ahead.
the internet represent a commons in the way that, or does AI have a commons? Will there be a common open place that is AI?
That's interesting. I haven't really thought about it that way. And you always ask such good thought-provoking questions that expand how to consider things. I'll say this: open weight models are very, very attractive because you can remove this like tension that exists where you have to have a proprietary weight on which, if it's proprietary weight, then it has to be managed by the proprietary weight owner because it can't expose the weights. And that's what OpenAI is. That's what Anthropic Claude is for the closed weight models. But open weight, like Llama and and Mistral and Qwen and all these other models, you can take those models, download them from Hugging Face, and deploy them on your own infrastructure or on some inference endpoint that you offer as a service. And so that's changing the economics. That's kind of more of the internet kind of way of thinking, right? Very more open. It's open source, open weight kind of minded. And there's a lot of very favorable economics there. And it's also really good for us because it turns out our technology, you need to know what the weights are to create a stained glass transform. So we support open weight models today and are helping kind of propagate and unlock that economic value to people. And then if you have a proprietary weight, you can use our stained glass engine to create a transform so that you can protect the knowledge of those weights. And then once that stained glass transform is deployed, then people can use your proprietary model. But that's one. I think that.
Thank you. I think the internet is a commons, and I wondered what is the role of big tech? Are they seeking to become dominant gatekeepers at the cost of other people easily accessing AI?
Well, I can't answer, what Mark and Dario and all those guys are thinking, but I can tell you that it does seem to be that their investors and boards are, wanting them to manage power, and manage control, which, we can talk about whether that's, we can talk about the values around that, right? I'll just say they have a lot of power. The model providers have a lot of power, particularly the proprietary ones, and the scale of capital that they've been able to amass. So, we're dancing with giants right now in that sense, right? We're just trying to figure out, who is going to. Yeah, let me just give you one other story that since we're old enough to know this. Remember in the internet days that you brought it up before e-commerce really, where there was this website and you found this cool t-shirt and you're like, I want to buy that t-shirt. So they have a web form on their t-shirt and you put in your credit card and when you're typing it in, you're realizing somebody else's credit card and name is in this web form. This is all before SSL, right? And so you'd see that and you're like, I don't know if I want to put my credit card in here. I want the t-shirt, whatever. Maybe you did that, maybe you didn't. The point is that kept happening, right? And so everyone's just leaving their data in these web forms on these websites that would eventually, until we had e-commerce and SSL fully kind of built out, was exposing people's data. And you didn't have the three or four letter, four number code for your card. So there wasn't some hacker figuring that out for a little while. And then eventually there were, but that's kind of where we are right now with AI. So we're kind of just using it, hoping it's all okay.
Who are your clients and who should be your clients?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Industries that have sensitive data, so defense, healthcare, financial services, higher education, research, energy, people that when they're using AI to advance their science, that they can do that in a safe way. And then other people that have proprietary information, I'll say bankers or scientists in the sense that today they're just trying to find edge with math. doing that is an ideal customer because they don't want to expose any of those prompts.
So,
Thank you.
so the way I think about all this, Mark, is that we are in it is 1990. The web is about to explode. There is no browser. The browser is coming. If you remember Netscape and all that, so that's what these LLMs are. The next step on top of that with the browser is now the application, OpenClaw, and on and on and on. We don't even know where that's going to go, being open or closed, proprietary, made in China, what have you. But when you look at this 7-layer stack of things that are making AI, I wonder about the following on cybersecurity. So it's clear to me that any private company that is big, any multinational, would want to buy your product to build their own stuff within their own garden and not let anybody in and take advantage of AI for process improvement, whatever, right? So yeah, I'm doing that in my own garden, which is a global garden, but it's my garden, right? But there's this thing called the public web or the public AI, where these LLM models are living today. People are surrendering their data to ChatGPT and whatever at the individual level, right?
Yes.
And that bubble is going to be gigantic, right? And you need to interact with that bubble, right? So help me understand how does the interaction happen securely? And then the last piece of the question, and you can unpack it however you want to, where does the dark web play a role on taking advantage of AI to do the bad things that they want to do?
Well, let's talk about the first thing, or let's answer the first part, just around kind of public and consumer versus enterprise and that whole thing, because we're all doing this today, right? Every time I want to ask a question to like I'll get a contract from a partner and I'll just push it through Claude in my personal version of Claude today, because again, we're like all running fast and trying to figure this stuff out. I'm like, that's a kind of innocuous thing. Somebody else has probably already done this. This is just a generic contract. Let me get some insights, right? So that's easy, right? Stuff like that. Summarization and some basic insights and recommendations. We're all doing that today. When you start having people doing that in these shadow AI use cases as an enterprise, which people do, you are, as a CISO, you don't know where the fire is burning. You just know it's burning somewhere, and you're stressed out. So is, of course, minimize what let people do, buy corporate licenses or deploy your own models corporately, and then use obfuscation, this transformation layer, to make sure that even the stuff that's being asked internally across business units, like say between credit and deposit, bank, or deposit and loans and deposits at a bank. You don't want all that stuff living in the same place for all kinds of important reasons. Even the appearance of doing that would be bad. So there's lots of ways to start kind of filtering for that. The dark web thing, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about that. We have all kinds of stuff that we published on our website, and we can talk about it. People are curious, that's the place to go. Look at our blog. We have lots of examples with NVIDIA, with NetApp, with HPE, and a bunch of other things that we're doing with big companies about that. But the dark web thing, the reality is the dark web, people are already doing things that are not good. So you just don't know about it yet. So the more you're using AI to try to race to get edge on, spilling all over the place. And so just be discerning is what I would say. I try to be very discerning about what I will even put in a prompt. I'm very discerning, because I don't want to find out in, my 2028 Mark Piening doesn't want to regret what 2026 Mark Piening was trying to do to get edge and then suffer the rest of his life. I know that's going to happen. There's going to be really bad stories people are going to have to live with. And why would you do that to yourself? Especially if you're an executive and you have, you're responsible for people.
Right.
So,
yeah, Mark, that's an excellent comment. The old professor's going to give you an assignment.
Please.
Is that okay?
Yeah, always. I'll
A
take one
great a great
anytime I get to
scholar
talk.
from a great scholar from South Africa wrote a book entitled Models Behaving Badly.
Mhm.
Why confusing reality can lead to disaster. And very briefly, we will always have financial problems because, I was at Northwestern when Black and Scholes were doing the Black Scholes models, which have worked very,
Mhm.
very well, by the way.
Mhm.
And they took the diffusion theory from physics on how stocks would move. And from that, they created a great, great system mathematically of how stocks move and how value and how value comes together with price, how stocks go on a random walk, and etc. But still, with physics, you're playing with the rules of God. He doesn't make many mistakes. But with finance and what we're doing here, and I spent my whole lifetime writing equations about the movement of people before this became social analytics and social psychology, economics, and sociology, right? That's all they did was to write equations
Mhm.
about the movement of people. So
Yeah.
my question to you is that and these models are very, very helpful, but we have to be aware that they are not the models of nature, they're the models of human behavior. And modeling human
1000%.
behavior is just wow. As I said, I've spent 40
Mhm.
years trying to model human behavior, and it's a pretty good job. We used to do it with census data, very, very static. Now we can do it full time. I call it social physics that was developed in the 1800s. So my question is you is, and when you talk about your modeling, did you look at the models that are successful? Can the models protect themselves? And after you read this book, or maybe you know already, what's the threat to human behavior and us trying to model human behavior?
Well, first of all, I'm going to read that book for sure because I know that your experience in studying data as a sociologist and all the work you've done, um, I know what I don't know about what you know is what I'm saying, and that's a lot. So thank you for that recommendation. I think about this a lot, actually, John. I've actually um, we are. It's a dangerous game we're playing
Hmm.
because these models are not reflective of nature.
No,
They are
that's right.
reflective of whatever we can understand. And
Right,
what we can talk about nature, things we don't understand, and quarks and all the things, and what does it mean when they're not. We don't know how to model that stuff, right? We can't model the chemistry on this call and the fact that we've known each other for a long time and that we bring context from knowing each
right.
other for a long time that other people don't know on this call. That is valid. That is like what is really happening, right? If you observe what's happening here. And so yes, I'm going to read models behaving badly, but also I am very concerned that we are using models to give us answers to questions that are not deeply thought of. They're just probabilistic. In fact, maybe this is a good closing comment for people to not forget, at least from my voice. We have been trained as scientists and as business people to drive to outcomes, which is deterministic thinking. We basically go, if this, then that, like you pointed out earlier. That is not how things work. And that's certainly not how models work, right? It's all probabilistic reasoning. We're doing probabilistic reasoning by finding the values that are mathematically equivalent to John the token, Sibley the token, Butler the token in the vector space. We find those values, but we probabilistically randomly select one that's mathematically equivalent. So it works. That's just finding patterns, right? And we don't know how these models, like how nature works to understand sufficiently. We can get close, and maybe the world will just be probabilistic from here on out, where we're just going to do the best we can and live with that. And that's kind of like we're in this inflection point of just being probabilistic. And I mean, that's kind of what we do as humans anyway, and you know that better than me. So I think, a lot of us need to stop and go, maybe we misunderstood. Deterministic thinking is good for certain things, but like, are you really sure? And I think, why even use that mindset if that's not how it all works? Just keep questioning whether or not these models are right. And that's at least how I'm thinking about it, because I know they're not right by definition. So what I'm trying to do is just use my critical thinking skills I that's why I went to college, is to learn how to think. And I just want to keep doing that. That's what I'm trying to teach my kids as they're in college now, just to learn how to think so that you can ask questions about whether this stuff is working or not. And hopefully that's what everybody's doing with this tech.
That is great advice, because I tell my students that if you look at the theory of thermodynamics, I mean that is a theory. I mean, that's a fact. It has been proven, it's a fact, that it's a relationship between temperature and et cetera, et cetera. But I can tell
Yeah.
you, when I read the Journal of Finance, which has more equations in it, and the more equations get complicated, the less useful they get, because there's no
Mm-hmm.
theory of finance. And the reason why is
Mm-hmm.
because of human behavior, and people will change their mind. A rock will not change their mind, right? So I think that
Yep.
I agree, but I think the models are very, very useful of human behavior. But we have to
Yeah,
be very, very aware, as you said, we are playing against the rules of man and people will change their mind. Physics is playing against the rules of nature, and God doesn't change his mind much. And
that's right.
I think from a scholarly point of view, what you're doing is very, very good, as long as you understand it is not the absolute fact of thermodynamics. It's just not,
Yeah,
right?
it's
It's,
not.
it's just not right.
It is definitely not. I have proof that it is not. I can promise you
Yeah.
that.
So I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
if you go back to my logic class that before
Mm-hmm.
I had in undergraduate school before computer science, you know, it was beat into our head that you go from philosophy to logic, from logic to science. And, we have this thing in academia about physics envy, right? We envy the physicists who really work with variables that don't change. But I think it's all that we have. But we have to be impressed by your company and trying to look at how we can model things, because they're very, very helpful. We just must always be aware in the back of our mind, it does not compose all of the variables, and variables can
Totally. Yeah.
change very, very quickly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's great. That is the truth. And anybody and one other thing, you brought it up earlier about the whole, the commons comment and the idea of like some of these power brokers, you know, there there is danger, great danger in people that think they can rely on these models to make just all these decisions, and then worse, become dependent, if not addicted, to those resources and the power that those players could have wield on people, communities, nations, the world.
Right. For
So,
example, Llewellyn King has wisdom, and there's a difference between
mhm,
knowledge and wisdom. When I was a professor in Japan for 14 summers, I went to Nagoya when they were doing the lectures, and they would have all the numbers, all the models in front of them, and they would turn to the oldest person in the world and say, "What do you think?" Because
mm,
you cannot get wisdom that Llewellyn King has from modeling. You can't get wisdom comes from getting your butt kicked, hitting your head up against the wall, understanding human
Johnny,
behavior.
Johnny,
And
are you trying to get out of something or into something?
well, but Llewellyn has wisdom, which no computer modeling would provide you with, right? And the wisdom comes
mhm,
from not from the data, right, that we have in right now in AI. The wisdom is independent, and this is why you go to college. You go to college for wisdom. You don't go to college for
mm,
facts. So when you say, "Well, I'm gonna learn how to think," right, that's the sum total of the math, the history, the biology, and you got a person like Llewellyn King who has lived in so many different places and have experienced so much things. There's nowhere in the world we can
yep.
put that in an AI model. It's just pure OD wisdom. So I think we should distinguish from facts and wisdom. And when you say, I teach my employees how to think, that is the wisdom. Matter of fact, my next book is the wisdom of Llewellyn King.
That'd be a good book. I'd read that one next. I might read that one first,
Hey,
actually.
with a question mark behind his name.
I find this very disturbing, Johnny. Are you not
Yeah.
going to send me another fruit plate?
But I think it's important, but if we go back and look at management, right, what we did wrong in
I
the
I told you
1970s,
with the last one the check was missing.
what we did wrong when after Freeman's book, right? We started to retire and fire all of our wisdom in American companies, right? And when you fire wisdom, you just can't use the facts that you have about an industry because this is the wisdom who created the companies. This is the wisdoms who did everything. So nobody, even my colleague here, Alex Cavalli, you cannot replace his wisdom. He has a lot of facts. He's written a lot of books, but the wisdom is what you're after. So let's distinguish between putting wisdom in there and let the models themselves provide the data patterns, but we still must have wisdom.
Well, and that's the reason I said yes as soon as this invitation to join you guys was offered, because I'm like, I know what's going on in this room or this virtual room, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to spend some more time with you guys.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll send you a fruit plate later.
Yeah. Mark, thank you
Thank you.
for the time and the insights. We need to have you back probably sooner rather than later because I suspect what I have witnessed since December 20th, when I started traveling to DC, San Francisco, then in January to San Diego, Davos, Las Vegas, to go to all these shows, World Economic Forum. I have not seen a speed of change like that in my lifetime. And I suspect it's
Yep.
only going to accelerate.
It's gonna. I mean, watch the news next week at GTC. I shared. I don't know if you got the link I offered, but to share with the listeners. But it is going to be crazy, like in a great way. I have to drink all my, medicine slash, get all my health optimizing inputs into my body before I go to DC to GCC in San Jose because it's going to be busy. It's going to be everyone from around the world. It's going to be amazing, and I'm sure Jensen has a lot of new information to share on Monday afternoon. And so, tune in. It'll be exciting.
Yeah, absolutely, gentlemen. Any final thoughts?
I thought it was very enlightening. A lot of stuff which was not clear to me. You've helped me with a lot more. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's a privilege
Johnny?
to share.
Yes, you're sitting on the pinnacle of confidence for the next economy. What you do will bring confidence and allow companies to grow. Great job. Continue to do it.
I hope so. Thank you.
But
Thank you
I
very
would
much.
give you an
Thank you,
example.
guys. Johnny, take us away.
You've got to get
Nice.
all these medications. Whiskey River, take my mind.
There you go.
Don't let a memory torture me. Whiskey River, don't run dry. You're all I got, take care of me. I'm drowning in a whiskey river, burying my soul and mind in the wounds I became. Feeling the amber current flowing from my mind, and the warm and empty soul left behind.
Beautiful.
Thank you, thank
Awesome.
you. Hey, by the way, March Madness begins. The Zilker bracket is on. Good luck to the Jayhawks. Everybody else, have a fun time. I hope UNC and UT
You see my
do
rock
well.
chalk here. I got it here for
Yeah.
you. I still got my Carolina over here, so we got to have both. But hey, I
Carolina
just took
and
off.
Kansas City, Carolina and the University of Kansas are gone. They're no longer the standard of basketball.
I
You guys
mean,
just remember this. This thing might be won by, like football. Butler. You never know.
it
With
might
this
be
NIL,
Miami of
Butler might
Ohio.
win it all.
It's true. Miami of Ohio is undefeated, I think, still. You never
That's
know
right.
nowadays.
Miami
It's
of
definitely
Ohio. Where did
changing.
they come from?
Who's ever got the NIL nowadays is really
That's right.
what's
It's
going on.
NIL. Okay. All right.
See
All
you
right.
guys.
See you
Take
guys.
care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.